Hello everyone, my name is ABA Pickle, and welcome back to Exoprimal. Today we're going to be going over a tier list of exosuits, and where I think each one will fall in category. Now, this isn't including the alpha variants, as I do not have all of them unlocked quite yet, but once I do, I will get that tier list out for just the alpha variants really soon. So, starting off, we're going to talk about the assault class. We're going to talk about Deadeye. He is super easy to use. He's got a normal assault rifle, he's got a grenade launcher that does massive damage and is really good for AoE and single target. He's got his thrust attack, which is good for knocking raptors back or dealing massive damage, or like Carnos and stuff like that. It can do some pretty good damage. I think he's one of the easiest and most basic exosuits to use, and he puts out a ton of damage. So with a low skill ceiling, with a high reward, I'm going to put Deadeye into the S tier. I think that's pretty clear, cut and dry. I think he's, honestly, in my opinion, he's my personal favorite. If he wasn't S tier, then nothing would be S tier. Moving on to the next DPS, we're going to be talking about Zephyr. Zephyr is a weird one. So he has, melee tonfas, he dashes around a lot, but he's not very tanky. So this makes it come down to who is using Zephyr. Are they really good at utilizing the dashes? Do they have the modules that they need effective as Zephyr? I will say someone starting off Zephyr, Zephyr has the potential of being a B tier if you're not utilizing your dashes correctly, but at the same time has the potential to be an S tier if you're really good with Zephyr. The ult, all it does is just speeds you up, so it's really effective. And can make him put out a lot of damage. I'm going to put him in the A tier because he does require a little bit more skill. He does put out pretty similar damage to Deadeye, but I think that added skill gap is really going to take it down just a little bit for me. But I still think he's really solid, and in the right hands, he also could be an S tier. Moving on to the third one, we have Barrage. Barrage is another one of those that he does take a little bit of skill to use. You have to place your grenades properly. You have to know where to put the little three-pronged darts that explode and cause the fire areas, which you can use on hordes. You can use on big dinos and just burn them and cause massive damage. His ultimate is a nuke, and we love to see that. His dash adds a little explosion and can catch fire in enemies, and he has a stun grenade, which is great for those big dinos. I think he does take a little bit more practice, I will say, not super long, like it takes a little bit to get the hang of him compared to, say, someone like Deadeye, who is the Soldier 76 of this game. I think Wukong definitely has more potential, though, once you get really good with him. So I'm also going to put Wukong up in the S tier. I feel like he's incredibly strong, and his massive damage with his ult is just insane. Moving on to the last assault, we have Vigilant. Vigilant is an incredibly awkward one, because I feel like Vigilant is really good in two regards. Vigilant is really good in the raid battles, and also really good in PvP, because you get to eliminate enemies and from a distance with consistent high damage and just really hammer in the enemies and hit those weak spots on the raid bosses. But I think when it comes to crowd control, you only have your ice ability, which when placed properly can get rid of a decent chunk, but is not up enough. And then the charge laser, which I forget the name of right now, the E if you're on PC, does a decent chunk through some hordes, but it just seems that when it comes to massive waves, Vigilant is not the best option. Definitely more single target based, and a lot of the abilities require a higher skill cap, which, granted, by the time you unlock Vigilant, you already are more accustomed to the game and you're more likely to be a little bit better, so you might be able to adapt to Vigilant a little bit more. But all that aside, I feel like all the other DPS have something that Vigilant just doesn't. And I feel like Vigilant only really excels in one area, while the other DPS can kind of do the same thing Vigilant does. If not, they just have to be a little closer up. So I'm going to put Vigilant as a B tier. I don't think the Vigilant is super strong. I feel like the hip firing of the sniper rifle, where it becomes that 3-round burst, is kind of useless. If you miss your Q or mess it up and only freeze one enemy, it kind of really gets rid of your crowd control potential a little bit. So if you disagree, feel free to defend her in the comments. I know the Vigilant is strong, and I have done very well with them in the past. I just feel like, in generally, for the community, not as strong. Moving on to the tanks, we're going to talk about Roadblock next. He is the bread and butter tank, the one that is a legitimate tank where you have your shield, you have your taunt, and you have fist to punch. The ultimate is good for hordes and nothing really else. Maybe it's pretty decent PvP, but I haven't used Roadblock in PvP very much. The punch is pretty damaging, but definitely, usually you want to have your shield up and taunting someone. So overall, I think he's very easy to use with a good potential to tank and keep everything at bay. So I'm going to put him in the A tier because I think his ultimate being a little bit lacking kind of puts him out of that S tier rank. Because Deadeye has the guns that flip out that does massive damage, and Wukong has his nuke. But Roadblock's Tornado doesn't do a ton of damage, and it's more useful for crowd control or hordes just in general. So I don't think the ultimate really pushes him through into that S tier. But I still think he's a very good tank. When it comes to Krieger, Krieger is such a weird one for me because I love and hate Krieger at the same time. His dome shield is really good if you use it at the proper times to block off enemies and make sure that you choke them in like a little small hallway, or you block off multiple hallways. I feel like he has great potential. There's so many Kriegers that I've seen that just bring up the shield right under where the dinosaurs spawn and spread them out everywhere, making it really hard for anyone that's good at crowd control to get rid of those raptors en masse. So I definitely think Krieger takes a little bit to get used to, but once you understand how to properly use that shield and you have a good feel for Krieger, he has the potential to be S tier. His ult does some really, really good damage. All you need is a Skywave to freeze someone as you nuke the Dominator as they come in, and it's goodbye Dominator, goodbye Big Dino. It's also really good for AoE. His minigun is really good at keeping enemies at bay, and as long as you have the reload efficiency on, you can keep firing that thing for literal years. And then the stun is really good for big dinos, of course. So I think Krieger has the potential to be S tier, and I think more often than not, once you get used to placing that dome, that's really is what's going to put Krieger in that S or A category. Moving on to Murasame. I'm bad at pronouncing his name. The Samurai. He has a very high potential to be S tier if you can get your counters off, but he's not really too much of a tank per se. He's very much a tank DPS hybrid, and I feel like that's where he excels at. He does have his taunts with his right click, where he just does the little circular slash, which usually you want to follow it up. But if you don't get that counter off, then he doesn't really do much. His ultimate is pretty good damaging wise. Takes a little bit to charge it up, but it's worth it. His counter's nice when you can get it off, but more often than not, at least in the early game, when you try to get your counter off, everyone else is just shooting every single dinosaur and trying to be as efficient as possible. And I always feel like you activate it, you just stand there, nothing ever hits you, or it ignores you, and then you go about your business. So I'm going to put him in the A tier because he does take a little bit of skill. He really does. But I do think that the counter is what keeps him out of the S tier. So I'm going to put him in the A tier and just think that if he can find a way, if they were to put that taunt onto the counter, it would be an S tier easy. But I think the AoE slash into the counter is really good for big dinos, but when it comes to using it in a horde, I find more often than not, Ryze use it, a Deadeye will use his grenade, or a Zephyr will use the linear strike and just knock everything away, and it's never fun. When it comes to healers, we're going to talk about Witch Doctor next. Witch Doctor, when it comes to healing, is phenomenal. The AoEs are really good at keeping everyone alive. You have the whips that can be used for two things. One, healing your allies, or two, recharging your staff. Your staff is the definition of a support weapon. It is crowd control, it shocks things, make sure things don't move. And those annoying pteranodons that no one ever pays attention to in any match get brought out of the sky, so your Zephyrs, your Murasames, your Deadeyes can easily just take care of them while they're on the ground and having a spasm. So I'm going to put Witch Doctor into the S tier. I think he is the best when it comes to just flat healing and supporting your team. And also, Witch Doctor is incredibly easy to use. Incredibly. All you got to do is just make sure the AoEs stay up and you're fine. When it comes to the next one with Skywave, if we're going to break this down into two categories here. Skywave, for healing, we're going to put Skywave at a B tier. I think Skywave, when it comes to the healing aspect of the support role, is only mediocre. Yes, you have that wave of healing that can heal a lot of enemies, but more often than not, I see so many Skywaves not using it for that purpose. I see them trying to DPS more often than not. And it's not a great exosuit for healing. Now, if we look on the flip side, and on the support aspect with the crowd control, Skywave is definitely in the A tier, I feel like. The ult is great for Dominators, great for T-Rexes and Carnos and big things that you just want to keep still so you can kill them faster. The Black Hole is great for AoEs. The basic attack can even hit a large number of enemies for a little decent amount of damage. And at the same time, if there's an ally in there, you can get some heals. And that is what's keeping Skywave at a B tier for me. I do not like playing Skywave personally, but I know that there are a lot of Skywave mains that are going to be upset about that. That is perfectly okay. Remember, these are just my opinions. I think Skywave is really good if used in conjunction with another healer, someone that's focused on healing. Which brings me to my last healer, which is Nimbus. Nimbus is a very, once again, it's a strange feel when you first start playing them because Nimbus works where you have an offensive mode and a healing mode. I like to make sure to switch between them pretty rapidly so I can keep my DPS up. Every single ability, the basic attack and the E ability on PC are pretty, the ones that will change a lot depending on what mode you're in. So you have two fire modes. You have your damaging pistols, and you can, when you switch into your other move, it will become a healing thing with the tracking on it, which is pretty damn good. Keep your allies all healed up. What I like to do is just empty the magazine and then switch, which automatically reloads you, and then just damage some things for a little bit. Watch my allies' health, switch back. The E ability, if you are in your damage mode, that will, I think it's called Rend, but it will be like an AoE damage, kind of like a wall of damage, which is really great for dealing with raptor hordes, all that good stuff. And then the other one is a healing AoE, so like, whatever's in front of you gets healed. But I will say that ability is incredibly close quarters, and I use it more for damage because I feel like I can consistently deal damage more so than heal everyone, because more often than not, people are too spread out to use it effectively. Granted, when it can be used like that, it's incredibly effective. With the ult, push everything away, which is nice, but I don't use it all too often because I feel like it's not as good of an ult, but it does really good damage for a healer, giving really good heals. But there's a high skill ceiling with Nimbus. You have to be able to balance your damage and your healing pretty well to give your team the advantage that they need. So I'm gonna say that Nimbus has the potential of being an S tier or a B tier, depending on the player. So I'm gonna put it in the A tier, just in the middle. I definitely think that the way I play Nimbus, really solid. I like Nimbus so much that personally I put it in the S tier, but knowing the general player base, I'm going to put it in the A tier just in case. But that is, my tier list. The only other thing there is the good old pilots. We're going to put those in the D tier because, well, as you guys know, they don't do anything. They don't have any damage, or they have a little bit of damage with their assault rifle. They can't dash. They don't have any abilities. Anyway, you get it. My name is ABA Pickleville. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did. Comment down below if you agree with my placements, if you would change any of them. And subscribe for more Exoprimal content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!